One of the biggest challenges when installing a solar and battery system in a home is where you can put all of the equipment associated with the system. In the previous video in this series, we selected an inverter and battery combination for our solar array on our 4-bedroom property and have determined that for the property, we will be fitting a 3.6 kilowatt inverter and two 5.32 kilowatt hour batteries. Be sure to hang around as well, as new regulations on suitable locations for batteries has been released in 2024, and the changes will impact everyone installing battery storage. And if you didn't know, this video is one in a series of videos that we've made in association with SunSync on the installation of a solar system. You can also click the link in the description below to view them as part of a free online training package to help you with your CPD and receive a certificate when you've completed the course. Choosing a suitable location for the equipment for the solar system is not always straightforward. We have a number of considerations that we need to make. Firstly, we have the manufacturer guidance. Then any regulatory requirements that also needs to be followed. We also need to consider if the installation locations or any part of it is a distance away from each other and how that can impact the efficiency of the equipment. Not to mention the aesthetics, as it is the customer who's going to have to live with it. Firstly though, how much space does the equipment take up? Different manufacturers will have different sizes and shapes of inverters and batteries. Some will even come in an all-in-one unit, which may take up significantly less space than our separate units. Our installation has two batteries and an inverter that can fit comfortably in a space just over 1 meter by 2 meters. So the assumption that we need a huge plant room or a wall space is just not right. So what are the manufacturer's requirements? For that, we need to look at the installation guides, and every manufacturer will issue installation guidance and data sheets with their equipment. For our installation, I'm going to be using this one from SunSync. SunSync outlined in their guidance that we should consider the following points when installing an inverter. A vertical wall with the load bearing capacity to hold the unit, and it should be a non-flammable surface. But if we were installing in a timber frame building, then a non-fire propagating material can be fitted on the wall prior to installation. The inverter needs to be installed at eye level to allow the LCD display to be read. The recommended temperature is between 5 to 40 degrees Celsius, and any temperature outside this range, the inverter and battery will derate itself to protect the equipment. We also need to ensure that the associated equipment like isolators and protective devices are spaced far enough away so we can unplug wires and also allow for heat dissipation. And we can see from this diagram we need to allow enough clearance around the inverter for airflow and heat to be able to dissipate. 500mm top and all around the unit and 1000mm in front of it. Inverters and batteries are heavy. This means a couple of things. We need to ensure the fixings used for the mounting brackets are rated to take the weight and that the materials we are fixing to is able to support the weight. We may be required to provide additional support, perhaps floor mounting, to be able to take that weight. Next, due to the weight, is the actual lifting. The batteries alone exceed the safe working limits for one person to carry, so mechanical aids or a second person will be needed to help lift the battery. But what about the batteries? Well, a little bit more thought is required, and it can be seen by the amount of considerations we are given in the installation guidance. As before, all manufacturers will offer installation guidance and advice on their equipment, and it's important we familiarise ourselves with that guidance. Manufacturers may also offer a range of batteries for different applications and installation types. The SunSync inverter and batteries we are installing on our installation can come in IP65 and be suitable for outdoor use, but we can also get equipment that is not suitable for that location. When installing batteries outside, we need to review the guidance. Here, it states that we need to avoid direct sunlight as the buildup of heat may damage the battery unit. Rain exposure and the potential for snow laying on the unit also needs to be considered. Let's look at some of the other conditions that need to be met. The battery should not be installed in a closed area without adequate ventilation as it may overheat. We need to ensure that the battery is not set where excessive oils, smoke, steam, moisture and dust are in the air. If the batteries are being installed in coastal locations, additional filtration may be required due to the salt that's in the air. They should not be installed near heat sources and in potentially explosive areas, and should not be installed at an altitude higher than 2,000 meters. Well, As the highest peak in the UK is Ben Nevis at 1,345 metres, we should be okay with that one. The wall needs to be flat and level, and if being mounted to the wall, be able to take the weight. Bearing in mind you may be also fitting an inverter and multiple batteries, so you may need to seek guidance on load bearings. We need to keep the unit more than 2,000 millimetres away from heat sources such as radiators or log burners. We also need to make sure that the distance from the air outlet of the inverter is more than 500 millimetres away from any obstruction, so the warm air can be easily dissipated away. The last point we'll look at is the ambient temperature. For a battery, the optimum temperature range is between 15 to 35 degrees Celsius. So we have some similarities between the inverter and battery and the considerations that we need to make for their locations. So when it comes to choosing the right location for the inverter and battery, we need to consider the available space, how far the equipment is from the solar array, the cable run from the consumer unit to the inverter, the need for a current transformer on the meter tails, and also noise. Some inverters have fans inside them to keep them cool, but the range of SunSync inverters don't have fans, so they're not going to be a noise nuisance. So where are the ideal locations for this equipment? Well, let's have a look at that now. Common locations used for installing inverter and battery equipment are garages, utility rooms, in loft spaces, and outside. But if you're lucky and you have the space, then its own dedicated plant room is perfect. We've seen equipment fitted in kitchens, understairs and hallways, but it is best to avoid these locations like stairs and hallways as they may be escape routes. I have gone into more detail on escape routes in the next video in this series. So each job is going to be different and our customers are going to have their own wants for where the equipment is going to be located. What we need to ensure is that the location is suitable for the equipment by making sure we have followed the manufacturer's guidance as well as any regulatory requirements. Not to mention making sure that the system will work at its optimum level. So let's look in more detail at some of the common locations. So let's start with the garage. If the customer has a garage which is attached to the house, then this is great as the units are readily accessible, and as garages tend to be used as, well, a garage, then we normally have enough wall space to be able to mount an inverter and battery. We should be able to meet the requirements for airflow and space, but it is important to explain to our customer not to use the inverter and battery to store things on or around, as airflow may be restricted. As garages can be located outside of the property and don't have their own source of heat, they may get cold in the winter and decrease the efficiency of the battery if it falls below 10 degrees Celsius. So we may need to consider installing a heater, like this panel heater or bar heater, to come on once the temperature drops below a certain level. Separate garages may be a distance away from the property, so we need to make sure that the cable coming from the solar array has sufficient protection if it's installed underground or overhead, and any volt drop has been considered. And aesthetically, the units are located out of the way, so from the customer perspective, it may seem an obvious choice, but we need to make sure we consider that potential drop in temperature and the additional risks of items being stored around the equipment. Utility rooms, if they're big enough, may seem like a great and obvious solution if the customer has the wall space for the equipment. If we take an average utility room, which probably has a washing machine, tumble dryer, maybe even a boiler and a place to dry clothes, the room may already be quite a warm place, not to mention the added moisture and humidity in the air. These may seem a tad far-fetched, but if we remind ourselves of the manufacturer's guidance, humid and moist locations were advised to be avoided, so we need to ensure the ventilation in the utility room is sufficient. So it may seem odd that we would consider outside as a suitable location, but if we look at these SunSync inverters and batteries, they are rated for outdoors as they are IP65. But is this even a realistic location? The biggest consideration is going to be water, and although they are rated at IP65, it's not advisable to have them in a position where constant exposure to water is going to happen. That might seem like contradictory advice, but if we were installing this near an outdoor car washing facility, the level of exposure to moisture is going to be higher. We also need to ensure that the inverter and battery are positioned so as not to be in direct sunlight. My biggest concern though is the temperature. Certainly in the colder months of the year, as supplementary heating for the battery is going to make little to no difference. Plus, it's going to cost a lot of money to operate. So running the batteries outside of their optimum temperature range is only going to degrade them faster. Loft spaces have created fierce debate for suitable locations for many years. I remember myself back in 2007 installing inverters in loft spaces because of the ease of wiring both to a consumer unit and to the PV array, and debating this with my fellow electricians at the wholesalers. So in 2024, are loft spaces suitable locations for batteries? Well, we now have a definitive answer which is given to us from the British Standards Institute in document PAS 63100 2024. And the answer is no. Section 6.5 is concerned with the protection against fire, and if we look in more detail at section 6.5.5, we can see the locations listed where batteries shall not be installed. They are rooms in which persons are intended to sleep, routes used as a means of escape that are not defined as protective escape routes, including landings, staircases and corridors, shafts, stairs or lobbies of protected escape routes, firefighting lobbies, shaft or staircases, storage cupboards, enclosures or spaces opening into a room in which persons are intended to sleep, outdoor locations within 1 meter of escape routes, doors, windows, ventilation ports, voids, roof spaces or lofts, within 2 meters of stored flammable material and fuel storage tanks and cylinders, and finally, cellars or basements that have no access to the outside of the building. This document is very new and we at eFix are still studying it. We will be releasing a video very soon going into more detail about PAS 63100 2024, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. Additional fire detection may need to be installed where you fit the associated equipment. We have seen on the news and social media where batteries and solar systems have caught fire and to devastating effects. Now, although the battery chemistry in this SunSync battery is incredibly stable, we still need to ensure smoke detection is installed as outlined in the code of practice. But you may be wondering why I haven't mentioned under the stairs as a suitable location. It's where consumer units and service cutout fuses have been cited for years. Well, the reason why is because we're not only enclosing this equipment in what is quite a small space, but is also directly below an escape route out of the property. So if the worst was to happen, the escape route could be impeded from upstairs. New regulations have also been issued on the installation of solar equipment in hallways, as again, in the event of an emergency or evacuation, it could be impeded by the solar equipment. So let's get back to our 4-bedroom property. We have already selected a 3.6 kilowatt inverter and 2 5.32 kilowatt hour batteries. Well, we can see that the customer has a large double garage, and although we may need to relocate the customer's fishing equipment, it is a more than suitable location for the batteries and inverters. In the next and final video of this series on the installation of a solar system, we will be diving into the electrical installation and the requirements needed under BS 7671, the code of practice and manufacturer's guidance for a solar system. So be sure to hit the link right here to view that video, or you can click a link in the description below to watch it as part of our free training package to help you with your CPD and receive a certificate as well. But until then, it's bye-bye for now.